सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसा शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः हंसा शिवा सोऽहम् सोऽहम् हंसः शिवः सा शिवा सोऽहम् हंसः Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, Upanishads are the various attempts made by the seers of yore to express the inexpressible. How that is possible? That is what the technique of Upanishads is. And today we are going to, over the next 2 days, we are going to look at the Keno Upanishad. And this Keno Upanishad is the 9th chapter, and it comes in the 9th chapter of the Talavakra branch of the Samaveda. And before the 9th chapter, the 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd and the 1st, all of them have already dealt with what is karma and what is upasana. Already it has been dealt with. Now, the student has come to a point where he has purified his mind and he has a deep interest in seeking out who he really is. And in that mental poise, he approaches the teacher, and here when he approaches the teacher, the first thing that happens, like we do here, we chant the 3 Oms and then the Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. In the Samaveda, in this particular Upanishad, it begins with Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. You may have heard these verses before. In Maharashtra in India they chant it before food. But it's a beautiful understanding that must prevail between a teacher and a taught, the teacher and the disciple. And what is that? It says, Om Sahana Bhavatu, that may that divine protect both me as well as the teacher. And the teacher is saying, me as well as the student. Why do we need protection? Why do we need protection? Think.
Viruses.
Mental viruses. That's right. Mental viruses. Everything is going on fine. Yesterday, when you came in, you asked me a question. Some topic came and I said, the Guru is inside, not outside. Now, I may have said that. What did he understand or what did she understand? That outside Guru is not necessary. I'm not saying that you did or you did not. I'm just making the story up now. Because as many minds, that many responses to one statement. So, outside Guru is not required. Oh, so I have got the Guru inside and I can do it myself. Yes, you can. But who is there to make you understand that the Guru is inside? Books are available, and we can start being ungrateful to the person who has taught you what you know today. You can become ungrateful to your own inner conscience, because of which we have reached where we have reached today. The Guru and disciple relationship outside is the Guru and disciple relationship between the intellect and the mind. Intellect is the Guru and the mind is the disciple. And in the end, the spirit is the Guru and the intellect is the disciple. But what should be this disciple like? And what should be the Guru like? It is like the the picture that when you come to my place, you see on the wall, Krishna, Arjuna and the chariot. You have seen that picture? The chariot represents the body, the Arjuna represents the individual, and the horses represent the senses, the reins which are tethered to the horses, they represent the mind, and the reins, that is the mind, is in the hand of the Lord who is sitting at the seat of the intellect. So that intellect which is surrendered to the infinite, that intellect which is surrendered and contemplating and meditating upon that infinite spirit, that unchangeable principle, it knows that it cannot reach it, yet it is thinking about it, knowing that thinking cannot take it there. Then what happens? Then automatically that, because intellect is that faculty within us which makes the decisions, isn't it? So naturally, decision making is more important than having too many thoughts in the mind. So once the decision has been made that I am going to come to the retreat, so all the other feelings that you may have had in your mind, that, oh, let me have a 1 hour sleep before I go, oh, I have been very tired working all the week, oh, let me play with my child for some time, or let me see this fantastic movie going on the TV, let me see the conclusion, then go to the retreat, or let me stop on the way in some place for food. I don't know, by the time I reach there, if I am late, the food will be available or not. All these are the viruses of the mind. But once the intellect has made the decision that I want to get here by 7:30, then all these viruses are shift deleted. They don't go into the recycle bin to come up and trouble us again and again. Then there is a proper relationship. Then the mind does what the intellect has decided. What is depression? When the intellect is at the mercy of the mind, at the mercy of these viruses. That is depression. That is sadness. That is confusion. That is frustration. But when the mind is under the control or under the framework of the intellect, whatever the intellect decides, the mind and as a result the body goes and does that. Then understand there is harmony within you. Then understand there is integrity within you. And when these two things happen, and slowly a new faculty is developed within you, and that is intuition, as a result of this integration of the mind, where the mind is doing what the intellect has decided, where the mind starts doing what it wants, and the intellect, poor fellow, keeps making decisions but never following through the decisions. Then a breakup in the personality comes. And such a person is a burden to himself as well as to the society. So, Om Sahana Bhavatu, may that divine principle protect me as well as the teacher. Why? Because I want to study from the teacher. May the teacher be healthy in order to communicate whatever he has to communicate to me. And may I be protected. Why? Because I want to remain healthy in body, mind and spirit, so that I am available to the teachings of the teacher 100% with inspiration. Sahanau bhunaktu. And then may he cause us both to enjoy the supreme. May we both exert together to discover the true inner meaning of the scriptures. The teacher teaches the student out of the wisdom that he already has. He understands that the student who is sitting there is nothing but divine. So the teacher's viewpoint of teaching is not to change anyone, because he knows there is only perfection. And the student's viewpoint is what? That I am an ignorant fellow and I need to realize, and I have to put in efforts, that I have to study the Upanishads, that I have to study the scriptures, that I have to meditate, that I have to do the chanting, all these things. And he must. See, there were two frogs. And they saw yogurt lying there. And they, oh, yogurt, food, hee-ha, and they jumped into it and started. And once they found themselves inside the yogurt, it was very thick. They had nothing to hold on to get out. Now what do? After how much can they eat? After that, and they started struggling to get out. In that struggle of continuous movement of their limbs, the yogurt started churning. One frog got tired. He saw, oh, I think everything is lost. I don't think I'm going to escape from this whole thing. And he gets exhausted and he goes to the bottom of the churning yogurt and dies. But the other one, oh, little bit more, maybe now I can get out, and he keeps struggling because there is still energy. Energy comes from inspiration. So he is putting in efforts. Suddenly he finds that the yogurt has become butter. The butter has separated, the water has separated. He's still finding, but when he puts his leg on the butter pieces, they're still too small to hold his weight. And then suddenly he gets exhausted. Oh man, I think I have to also go down. I can't do anything. Oh Lord, please help me. At that very moment, all the pieces of butter, floating pieces of butter, they come together and they form a big lump. From where did this come from? And immediately he puts one leg on that butter and jumps out. We have to put efforts till the point where effortlessness expresses as a naturally. To think that reality is to be reached without efforts, and from beginning itself we are not putting efforts. You will never overcome laziness and inadvertence. Efforts are required. Tamas has to be conquered by Rajas, and Rajas has to be conquered by purity of the mind, the Sattva. But to straight away say, oh, I am a Sattvic, I am not going to put in efforts. It's a very fine line between purity and laziness. The expressions of both are similar. Pure fellow also doesn't do anything, the lazy fellow also doesn't do anything. But the pure fellow does nothing out of wisdom. And a lazy fellow is choosing not to, wanting to do anything. So, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahe. Viryam is the vital force within us. May we both exert together. May I not leave any page unturned, any stone unturned to know what the truth is. And may we both come to realize that truth. Tejasvinavadhi tamastu. And by putting this vital energy within us in the direction, we tejasvinavadhitamastu. May we purify our minds, may we make our minds single pointed and come to abide in that reality which is our essential nature. Ma vidvishavahi, and may we not fight with each other. Very important. Teacher, and let mind and intellect not be enemies of each other. Enemies means what? The mind will do its own thing, the intellect keeps making decisions. Poor fellow, can't get anywhere. Same thing with teacher-disciple relationship, same thing. Let there be no fights, let there be no arguments. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And these are the three Shantis which pacify the three forces that are prevalent within our nature. First is the Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik and Adhyatmik. Adi Bhautik forces are those forces which are within our control but we don't exercise our control. So Adi Devik is those forces which are out of our control. If it rains or doesn't rain. Today 17 degrees but the clouds are there. Not in our control. Okay. Peace, peace, peace. Second piece. The third piece, those forces which are bubbling from inside and wanting to disturb, may they also be calmed down. Therefore, peace, peace, peace. So this way, the Upanishad begins with this invocation mantra where both the teacher and the student invoke the best out of each other. When we say Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Reva Param Brahma, Guru Eva Param Brahma. First we say Guru is Brahma, Guru is Vishnu, Guru is Maheshwara. Actually some masters say Brahma is Guru, Vishnu is Guru, Shiva is Guru. Guru Reva Param Brahma. That Guru principle is the only truth. Just because we are saying Brahma is Guru or Vishnu is Guru or Shiva is Guru does not mean that Guru is with a particular form. This Guru principle is that one without a second principle. Guru Reva Param Brahma. Tasmai Shri Guru. To that principle I prostrate again and again. I salute again and again. I surrender again and again. And with this attitude we enter into the Upanishad. And one more Shanti mantra is taken, and here it is said, Om Apyayantu Mamangani Vakprana Chakshushotra Matho Balamindriyani Cha Sarvani Sarva Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakarana Mastva Nirakaranam Mestu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharma Te Mahi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Here he says that may my limbs, in the second part of the invocation mantra, may my limbs, speech, the vital airs, the pranas, eyes, ears, strength of all my senses grow vigorous. Everything is the Brahman of the Upanishads. May I never deny the Brahman. See, our understanding from Vedanta standpoint of view, or from the absolute standpoint of view, or the spirit point of view is, when I say spirit, suddenly our attention goes, oh, the spirit inside, the life principle. No, according to Vedanta, the absolute principle, the spirit, the infinite essence in every one of us is the only one. That is the only thing that there is. And on that we have, I shouldn't say, not on that, that itself is expressing as everything. At all the times, in all the places, in all the objects, in all the beings. Not only in, also as. Just like we may call the water as wave, froth, tide, etc., but it is all water. Just because you are calling it by different names, the water has neither become less nor more. It does not matter to water by what name you call it. The truth is, water alone is. Same way, we have to bring our attention to that and make it so subtle that we are able to not even perceive, we are able to not even understand. We can't understand, we can't perceive. We have to come to a point where we initially come to this conclusion that this self alone is the only thing that is there. Everything else is nothing but just, you can say, an imagination on it. Because what is there in this creation? It is all names and forms, isn't it? So when we say Om Sahasra Shirasha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapad, what is this divine? This divine is with thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, thousands of ears, thousands of feet, thousands of hands. Om Sahasra Shirasha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapad Sabhumim Vishwato Vritva Atyatishthad Dashangulam. And this infinite being who is expressing as infinite number of eyes and limbs and etc., etc., where can we be caught? And where is he expressing within you? Atyatishthad Dashangulam. He is in the space as big as your thumb within your bosom. It's in the sternum, wherever you may. Huh? So, what is realization now? Is realization that, oh Lord, I want to reach your abode. Some imaginary abode? No. Realization here and now will mean your direct experience where you are able to see yourself expressing as the total creation. Isn't it? When a person goes to, a child is born, what does that child do? Continuously, first word mama, then dada, then one child is there. Since she came here a few times during our retreats, she calls me Om. Om, 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 Om. And now she's grown up, almost 6 months have passed. She's about 2 years now. Now one day parents asked, they were coming to Janmashtami, they said, what is Om's name? She said, Hari Om. So she added Hari to it. So first it was Om, now it has become Hari Om. So slowly vocabulary is increasing, isn't it? But where is this potential coming from within that child? First that child could not even move, then it learns how to turn this side and that side, then it learns how to crawl, then it learns how to walk, then it learns how to speak, then he learns how to form sentences, then he learns how to eat food by himself or herself, then he learns 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. Where is this potential expressing from? It is unmanifest in that child, and that child is slowly and with the help of outside gurus, that potential is getting invoked, isn't it? So it is all lying latent within. And when the attention of that child is put on that particular thing, it starts expressing. Like for example, even after so many years, till 4 years ago, I did not know anything about computers. So that information was lying latent, unmanifest. Then one day, one virus came in. I must study. It's easier to send emails and let everyone know. I did not have mobile. Oh, it is easier. Then I can contact wherever I want. Then I don't have to carry change in my pocket or a card in my pocket and then look for a Telstra booth, because they are also becoming scarce nowadays. So to learn about the computer, it took time. I am still learning, but that ability was there. Now I am learning it. Once upon a time, I could not sit like this for even 15 minutes straight. Now, I can sleep like this also. No problem. Others will think I am in meditation. So the potential is there. Potential is there. And that potential, wherever we direct our attention, that potential starts expressing, isn't it? So here the teacher, the invocation mantra is saying, may my limbs, speech, pranas, eyes, ears, strength of all my senses grow vigorous. Why? Because only an alert person can reach the truth. That alertness is required. What is that alertness? That no moment of my life must pass by without my attention. I must be aware of every moment that is passing through my life. It is not by default that I am living. So, everything is Brahman of the Upanishads. May I never deny the Brahman. See, this is also one, a matter of faith. We may all want to know the truth, We may all want to know the God principle, we may all want to know the infinite principle, but where is that principle? What is that principle? How is it expressing? Is it there or not? Some people call it force, some people call it God, some people don't want to believe in it. The fact that we are here and it is there within us to know that, hey, there is something that I want to know. I have an inkling about it. This, just having this much information is not enough. To know that this principle that you are searching is Brahman. It is the infinite principle. It is not one per person. May I never deny that Brahman. The purpose of our human birth is only to seek this out. To come to this conclusion that this conscious principle within itself is the infinite Brahman. Renuka, just tell those kids to come in because I think they are coming in. Come. May the Brahman never spurn me. May there be no denial of the Brahman. May there be no spurning of by the Brahman. Let all the virtues recited by the Upanishads repose in me, delighting in the Atman. May they in me repose. Meaning what? If Brahman, the reality, the absolute truth itself is expressing as all the morals, all the principles, all the duties, all the responsibilities, all the good that there is, may all that come to me so that I can reach that ultimate truth, so that I can recognize that ultimate truth is the self alone. For this is what we call surrender, in other words. Some people say surrender means, Buddha is there, so I surrender to the Buddha. But there are enough. Maybe sometime we can take that topic, stories of different saints. And there are n number of saints in India, having different experiences. Now you see, we are looking at a stone statue and we imagine that in this stone statue there is divinity. Isn't it? What is making us go to the temples? What is making us go to the churches? What is making us go to the mosques and suspect divinity in that inert form? The Zoroastrians, they suspect divinity in the fire. The Hindus suspect or recognize the divinity in the form of Krishna, form of Rama, form of Shiva, form of the Devis. The Buddhists recognize that, this Buddha is the one, because that particular form stands for certain ideals and morals and principles, because of which one man, married, having a child, prince, protected from all the negativities in the society, came to, and he dropped all that and came to realize the truth. And most of you have read the story of Buddha, Siddhartha. See what trials and tribulations he went through. Many times he slipped also. You have read the Living with the Himalayan Masters. Have you all read that? Some of you have read it. Read that book. You will see how that one Swami Rama, he passed away in 97. That academy is still there, the Himalayan Academy. He was born as a blessing of a great master to one couple. And he said, I will bless you with a child, but the child is mine. Okay. The child became 12, 13 years old. He said, where's my child? I want my child. But by that time, they said, no, one more year or 1 more year. Then the destiny was such that they passed away. The child came to the master. And the relationship between the teacher and the master, no student thinks that his master is the realized master. Majority of them. There is a suspicion. Is he trained? Because continuously contradictory language is being used. He is concentrating upon the actions of the teacher, and the teacher is telling him, don't look at my actions. Listen to my words. But the student is obsessed with the form, and as a result, he is continuously judging the teacher. And in that story, what happens? The student, he says, I think I want to, he starts feeling that I think he doesn't know much, he's not guiding me. And suddenly he goes for a walk and suddenly comes across another teacher, and he says, yes, you know. He says, Guruji, I met this one, and he says he will initiate me into Gayatri Upasana. He says, oh, did you say that? Go. The thought has entered into the student's mind. The teacher will not say, don't go. Go. Find it the difficult way. And he goes. After how many? For 9 months he was chanting Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tat Saviturvarenyam, and one day he said, enough, what am I doing all this for? And he comes back. Then he falls in love with a girl, and he lives with a girl. I think he marries or he doesn't marry, I can't remember. And then he says, from where did the desire come? Where did I get caught up? And then suddenly one day walks out. And then he becomes a Shankaracharya. Then he walks out of that. Then he comes back to his teacher. Then the teacher says, so you have come. Then he says, yes, everything. I just wandered everywhere. But the answer was, you are my teacher. He says, oh, thank you for accepting me as your teacher. And he comes. And then he starts, and again one virus enters, and again he goes away. This student continuously keeps getting viruses against the teacher. And I'm not just talking about a physical teacher. I'm talking about the teacher within. Continuously the mind keeps going out into the world. The closest thing for the mind to apprehend is the self, isn't it? Because the material that has gone into the mind itself is the self. The material that has gone into making a wave or a tide itself is water. And the wave is looking, oh, please give me realization, I want to realize water. Arey Baba, you are the water. This is the virus. And for that, we need extreme alertness. Extreme alertness. Not even the eyelid should bat without our knowledge. It is not that you are concentrating on your eyelids. Oh, I am going to be concentrating on. No, you have to be aware of everything. Not only about your body, your breath, your mind, your intellect, but also everything around. Initially, it seems it's only here. But as we become quieter and accept that we are that infinite reality, expansion takes place of the consciousness. And in that expansion, the alertness, the sphere of influence of that consciousness keeps widening, just like that ripple. You throw a stone in a calm waters, first one ripple, then the second one. So that one stone's first ripple, its sphere of influence extends right till the edges of the water, isn't it? Same way. When we think about this reality that we are, essentially, that thought that I am that reality, I am, the ripple begins. But you have to allow that ripple. Because how do we stop that ripple? Suddenly by thinking about, oh, but I'm hungry now. The ripple stops. Suddenly you are sitting in deep in meditation. I think for a long time I was sitting without moving. Gone. The ripple has broken. Expansion was happening in that silence. Only in silence that expansion can take place. And for that, optimum functioning of the limbs as well as the senses and mind and intellect is a prerequisite. For this purpose, the yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, these three are even dharana dhyan. For this purpose it is done. For making them optimum. Making eyes optimum doesn't mean that you should lose your glasses. No. Making the vision optimum vision means you are able to see through things. You are not caught up only in the names and forms. Making the hearing optimum doesn't mean that you are affected by your listening. Oh, I think she's gossiping about me. Oh, I think he's praising me. Oh, I think, did you say Swami? You're talking about me. What did you talk about? This is not alertness. Optimum hearing means that you are able to go beyond the word and come to what is beyond the word, what is beyond the sight, what is beyond the senses. That we must apprehend and accept as the essential me. And therefore, may the Brahman never spurn me. Recognition is one thing, but here is a prayer. Oh Lord, don't forsake me. Oh Lord, don't leave me. Oh Lord, please bless me. So here, may the Brahman never spurn me. May there be no denial of the Brahman. Not only that, reality, that you should not think that I am not a worthy person to know you, but also I may also think that Brahman is a worthy goal to be achieved. It should be both ways. And don't think about this dialogue only in the book. I have given you, there is one dialogue which is taking place between the teacher and the student. The second dialogue is, the teacher is the intellect and the student is the mind. And the third dialogue is, the teacher is the self and the student is the intellect. So at the three levels, be aware of these three throughout the 2 days. May there be no spurning by the Brahman. He is not a person. Brahman cannot do that. God cannot do that. Because what is the nature of God? Unconditional love. Unconditional love means everything is included in that love. Everything, everyone, every object is included. And that is Brahman. Let all the virtues recited by the Upanishads repose in me, delighting in the Atman. May they in me repose. So may they express through me, may they come to me. And this way the teacher and the student start their lesson chanting these two invocation mantras. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Apyayantu Mamangani Vakpranachakshushotramatho Balamindriyani cha sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryan Mama Brahma Nirakarod Anirakaranamastu Nirakaranam Mestu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharma Te Mai Santu, Te Mai Santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Te Mai Santu, Te Mai Santu. So, Tadatmani Nirate Ya Upanishatsu Dharma Te Mai Santu, Te Mai Santu. That may the Brahman not leave me. And now, with this invocation, the Kenopanishad begins. The first verse goes, Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha Kena prana prathama praiti yuktaha Kene shitam vachamimam vadanti Chakshushrotram kaudevo yunakti. He says, the whole Kenopanishads and all other Upanishads also, they are a dialogue between the student and the teacher. It is not just out of, for no reason the teacher is speaking. No. When there is no one to ask question, the teacher remains in silence, abiding in the self. But when prompted from outside, tickled from outside by a student, Swamiji, please. When I go with Anubhavananji, that's what he does. You have seen him, he's quiet. He will walk, he just roam around. Swamiji, why is the leaf moving? Sometimes I ask very ridiculous questions. Sometimes I ask profound questions. So because I am in that, I want to see how he looks at the creation. What is going on in his mind at that time when a question is asked? My attention is not on the answer. I want to see from where does he answer that question. So here the disciple asks the question. If you read the brochure, this is what we said. By whom, willed and directed, does the mind light upon its objects? Commanded by whom does the main vital air, that is the pranas, proceed in to function? By whose will do men utter speech? What intelligence directs the eyes and the ears towards their respective objects? The whole Upanishad is a conversation between the student and the teacher. The student, he has lived his life fully and completely with alertness. He is not just come out of a disco bar and he has come, okay, teach me what the Upanishad says. No. This student has lived an alert life. He has analyzed, he has re-evaluated. He has pondered upon whatever he could control, whatever he could discard, he has discarded. He has recognized that he is not the body. He has come to this point where he sees that the senses are functioning, but the senses are there in a dead man too. He has come to this, but not functioning. So his question is, what is that because of which the eyes are able to see, the ears are able to hear, the tongue is able to speak, the mind is able to think? What is that because of which all this is able to happen? Who makes the breath begin? Who is pushing the air out and who's pulling the air in through the nostrils? We stop at the nostrils, isn't it? When we are said, say, okay, watch your breath coming in and going out. So we are still stuck in the movement of the breath. Our attention should be on because of whom this observation of the movement of in and out breath is possible. Then we have done justice to that exercise. See? So he has rejected the whole world, all the competitions, comparisons, the joys and sorrows and likes and dislikes, all that he has worked out, and he has grown within himself and come to this point where that he starts inquiring within himself. And he sees that sense organs they are not looking at the objects of perception for themselves. Eyes are not seeing the forms for itself, isn't it? The ears are not hearing the words for itself. There is someone else behind, some intelligence behind, for whom the words are being taken in, for whom the pictures are being taken in, for whom the smell is being taken in. Who is that? And this way he questions the teacher, and as a result he he says, the mind goes out and seeks the objects and takes the shape of the object. So this is a theory of perception in the Vedanta, and this says that the mind behind the senses goes out through the senses and envelops the object or the sound or the smell or the whatever is the stimuli, and then brings it back to experience it. This is how the interaction with the world goes on. But even this mind which is going yesterday we were talking about it. What is Uparama? Remember Shama, Dama, Uparama. What is Uparama? Where the mind is no longer leaking out through the senses, isn't it? So you can control that mind, but when you control that mind from leaking out of the senses to go and get involved in the world of perceptions, but mind can still imagine the names and forms within itself, isn't it? And very daily experience of ours is the dream. The space, air, fire, water, earth, names, forms, sound, smells, touch, relationships, communication, everything happens in the dream. And it is very real. Your senses are all closed. You can't see anything because your eyes are closed, but you can see the pictures in the mind. What is making the mind, or what is that which is pushing the mind out? Because I have realized mind is nothing but thoughts. This, I'm telling you where the student has come to the conclusion. And what is his problem? He has recognized that senses do not function for themselves. Mind, they collect all the information for the mind. He has come to this conclusion also that the mind doesn't function for itself. That is its habit. It goes out of the senses, it collects the information and brings it to itself. In what manner? In the form of thoughts. And these thoughts also, they come and go. And each thought that comes to the mind comes because of some principle which recognizes that this thought is, isn't it? If I say whatever the words are going on right now, coming out of my mouth, you are listening to those words? Listening to the words, 4 alphabets, the 4 words made up of few alphabets. They have just come. Whether a child is also listening to it, those words, but no meaning comes to that child. Correct? But you are listening to these words. From where is the understanding coming from? Oh, you will say, oh, the mind is understanding, the intellect is understanding. Because of whom is that understanding taking place? This is the problem of the student now. He has worked everything else out, but he is not able to work out what is that principle behind the senses, behind the mind, behind the intellect, which makes the senses become alive, which makes the mind functional, which makes the intellect discriminate. What is that principle? And with this question, the disciple asked, what projects the mind out? Who pushes the mind out? You will say, oh, desire pushes the mind out. Because that is what we say, isn't it? That a latent impression, a subconscious impression in the mind, subconscious mind expresses as a desire in the intellect, and then for that desire is always, I want something, I want to fulfill something, I want to gain something, whatever it has liked or disliked. And that desire, as it gathers force, it makes the mind go out. And how does the mind go out? Through the senses and through the limbs, and as a result of that, the body moves towards the direction that that desire is wanting to fulfill. But this moving out of the mind, is there some another entity which pushes the mind out? Is there? What is that which pushes the ocean continuously towards the shore? Wave after wave after wave after wave. Oh, we'll say, oh, the wind is there. What makes the eyes go out? You can say the mind. What makes the mind go out through the eyes? We can say desire. But what makes the desire appear? What pushes the desire out from the depths of your subconscious mind? How is this movement possible? So this is the question of the student. So, answering this question, this teacher says that Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Mano Yada Vachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Pranaha Chakshuscha Chakshurati Muchya Dhiraha Pretyasman Lokadamruta Bhavanti. The teacher says, O student, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Mano Yada. He says, it is the Shrotrasya Shrotram, it is the ear of the ear that makes the ear go out and grab the sounds. It is the mind of the mind, it is the mind of the mind which makes the mind go out through the senses and gather the stimuli. Vachoho Vacham, that the answer to your question is, it is the speech of the speech. So it is the what you call the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, sau pranasya pranaha, and the tongue of the tongue, speech of the and also the life of the life, and the eye of the eye, and having abandoned Pretsman lokad amruta bhavanti, having abandoned the sense of self or I-ness in these and rising above sense life, the wise becomes amruta bhavanti, becomes immortal. See, our Upanishads, the Vedas, the Vedanta's methodology, it does not say that read the scriptures, contemplate on the scriptures, sit and meditate and realize. We don't follow that. Vedanta does not say yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyaha, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. We do not propagate that. Then what does Vedanta say? Take the name of the Lord. That also Vedanta doesn't say. Then what do? Vedanta says, no, it doesn't say that also. That I say. That's the last one. There are 3 steps. First is Shravana, second is Manana, and third is Nididhyasana. 3 steps. Manana, Shravana means listen to the scriptures, listen to the truth. You cannot read about truth and come to realize. Impossible. You need a conscious person to direct your mind towards that subtle principle, which is also the same principle within the teacher. Listen. Then second, Manan. What you have listened up to, you reflect upon it again and again. So what have we listened? That principle, what is that which makes the senses and the mind and the limbs go out? He says it is the ear of the ear. Now you reflect, what does the teacher mean, ear of the ear? Then he says mind of the mind. What does it mean, the mind of, what do you mean? There is a mind behind the mind. Then what is behind that mind? Again another mind. Then add infinitum, keep going back. No. Suddenly the teachers are saying that it is the speech of the speech, it is the pranas, the vital air behind the vital air, it is the vitality behind the vital air. Then it says chakshush, it is the eye of the eye. And a person who is contemplating on this principle, which is expressing as sight through the eyes, is expressing as hearing through the ears, is expressing as the smell through the nose, is expressing as the power of speech behind this gross speech. Such a person is a dhiraha. Dhiraha means a wise person. We have said this many times, even at our home when we have the satsangs. When you are listening, where your attention should be? On the speech, no.
On the sense of it, but rather than the words.
On the
understanding rather than the words.
no, understanding is at the level of mind. On the teacher, then you will not reach anywhere.
From the awareness level. Awareness to awareness.
Awareness to say?
With subject.
On the subject.
Witnessing consciousness.
Witnessing consciousness. So, self. Our attention, but all these witnessing consciousness, observer, self, you cannot come to know it because mind cannot reach it. Mind can function only in names and forms, through thoughts. And what has he said? It is the mind of the mind. It is the life force behind the life that you are experiencing right now. So, where should be our attention? Our attention should not be on the words. Our attention should be, while right now, our attention should be what is that principle, what is that force, what is that factor because of which the mind is able to function, the eyes are able to function, the ears are able to listen. Because he has not become many. Right now you are seeing, hearing, touching, feeling, tasting, thinking, understanding, all simultaneously is happening, isn't it? But you cannot say, oh, now I will only think, now I will only hear. As much as you may try, but everything is happening spontaneously. Because of whom this is happening? So while listening, if our attention is on that principle, which is expressing as the life force within us, which is expressing as the hearing ability within the ears, which is expressing as the understanding behind the mind, put your attention on that. Because of whom this is happening. This is reflection. Initially when we start on this, we may sometimes, some moments it feels, yeah, I understand that. I can catch it. I am that. But very next moment, the mental virus comes and you watch yourself. For 1 hour you will be all concentrating here, very diligently listening, and I also feel that you are understanding. But the moment class finishes, hey Keith, how was the Indian trip? The virus begins. Rita, do you need any help in the kitchen? Second virus. So you are going to show the video of Janmashtami, third virus. It does not continue. So reflection is that second step where mind is still very unsteady, but it is getting glimpses here and there. For that, the third part, what she said, contemplation is required. Now again and again, when you do reflection upon, not, she says, teacher. You can't contemplate on the teacher. You have to contemplate on the teacher within, that conscious principle. Why sell yourself short by taking some support from outside when the greatest support of all times is within us? Because of whom this whole creation is possible. Don't tell me that creation was there before I was born and the creation will be there even after I die. For whom? Your creation began the day you were born and it will die the day you die. We are talking about that creation. No, but the physical creation, you will not be there whether it is there or not. No, but other people die and then they were born and then they die and they have experience. But that consciousness cannot. You know? So first is Shravanam. Shravanam is active listening. A purified student doesn't need to go to the next two steps, reflection and contemplation. If he has purified himself and he has total faith, just like Arjuna said, "Oh Lord, tell me the truth without any ambiguity." Why? Because I am surrendered at your feet and also I am your disciple. That is the attitude that a student must have. Not that the teacher is demanding, but that is a prerequisite, because there are no, what will be the word? Huh?
Obstacles.
No. There is no sense of ego, because if the student is continuously thinking that I can do it, it will be very difficult. The ego is becoming strong. And again, I am not saying this attitude of surrender, again, first for some unpolished students, for them it may be the teacher outside. For a bit more polished student, it may be the glimpse of self within. So it depends where you are. So there, a more polished student will keep the mind under the control of the intellect, and a perfect student, like Ramakrishna Paramhans was. He said, I had tried everything, Christianity, devotion, yoga, ritualism, everything I tried. I want to know that one without a second. And the moment he thought about it, that is the sign of purity. The moment he thought about it, within no time, a teacher came walking into his presence. Totapuri Maharaj. And that teacher came and he says, son, what you are doing is wrong. You have to go beyond it. Because what was the problem of Ramakrishna Paramhans? He used to, the moment he used to sit, he used to see the goddess picture in front of his eyes and he used to go into samadhi. And it was becoming an obstacle. He could not go beyond. And he knew that if this picture, this form of the goddess has come to his mind and his mind is experiencing, it is still name and form. I want to go beyond. What is the cause of both of them? What is behind this? The moment this question came for that great master, the teacher came. Sit down. Put his hand on his head. Or I think he chanted something in his ears. And for 3 days he was in samadhi. For 3 days he was in samadhi. Now see the twist, how the whole thing gets twisted. Totapuri Maharaj says, reality is one without a second. There is no place for forms. And he gave that experience to Ramakrishna Paramhans. When he was, no, I can't do it, the goddess comes. He says, now you go into meditation, I'll take you through it. And that's where the teacher is required. He says, now what? I can't, the goddess is there. He says, take a sword. He takes a sword. And he says, cut the head of the goddess. He says, no, I can't do that. My goddess, my mother, how can I cut it? And in the meditation, it's an active imagination, because goddess is a thought. So another thought from the mind was initiated, which carried a sword, and he cut. For 3 days, Ramakrishna did not come out of his meditation. And when he came out, because they were locked in a garden, and people were saying, where has our teacher gone? Where has our teacher gone? Eventually, Ramakrishna, after 3 days, he comes out. And Ramakrishna Paramhans says, Totapuri Maharaj says, yes, there is only one reality without a second. And it does not have any form. That is only knowledge. Ramakrishna Paramhans says, no. Oh teacher, my experience is reality is with form and without form. You cannot deny the world again and again and again and again. Initially, you have to deny the names and forms to come to the Atman, the conscious principle within. But the second stage, Totapuri Maharaj had not seen, had not experienced. What is that? Huh? The second stage of it was Anvaya Sadhana, that is, all this is nothing but I, which Ramakrishna Paramahans had experienced. And then Totapuri Maharaj becomes the disciple of Ramakrishna Paramahans. See the drama. He becomes the disciple and he says, "Oh, you are the greatest." And he goes to Puri. I'm going there now. And he goes and sits on the hill and he does not move from there. Why? Because he feels that his contemplation has been incomplete. He was able to show the Vedanta, help Ramakrishna Paramahans come to the self, but Ramakrishna Paramahans says, within those 3 days, has gone one step beyond him. In Vedanta, there are two stages. One is, I am not the world, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am the self. Then the second stage is, this self is not only in this body, but this self alone is expressing as all the intellects, as all the minds, as all the breaths, as all the bodies. In fact, everything in this creation is nothing but this self alone. This is the second part. When this happens, then a person is said to be, if I can use the word, fully realized. Otherwise, such a person runs away to the Himalayas. Totapuri Maharaj was like this. He said, "What are you doing here and all this? Now you know that reality is one without a second. And there is no place for this world. Go and live in some exclusion somewhere, where nothing from this world can come and disturb you." Ramakrishna, nothing disturbs me anyway. What do you mean? Everything is me alone. How can that be possible? But for that, he needed the instruction from Ramakrishna Paramahans. When you read stories like this of great masters, you find these subtle points. So here, the teacher, in the second verse says, Shrotrasya shrotram manaso mano yada vachoha vacham ya upranasya pranaha chakshuscha chakshurati muchya dhira pretyasman lokad amruta bhavanti. Who is this man of wisdom? There are three expressions of this man of wisdom. First, he is not influenced by the world outside. Such is a man of wisdom. Dhira Purush means, Dhi means the intellect. And Dhira means he whose intellect is not oscillating with different ideas. It is fixated or aware of and contemplating on the self all the time. Just like that Krishna and Arjuna picture. Continuously Arjuna is looking at Krishna only. Or Krishna is sitting on the seat of intellect, where all the thoughts in the intellect, because intellect is nothing but all the thoughts put together. That's how it thinks. When all the thoughts are that of reality, then that intellect becomes steady. When all the thoughts are about coming and spending 1 hour in this room, then automatically mind will not go out, because you have made a decision that whether I like it or not, now I've paid the money, I have to be here. Whatever argument you use within your mind, but right now I don't see any agitation on anyone's face. Why? You have accepted, you have made a decision and you are here, that's it. Now after some time we will go out, now the sun has come out, we will go out for a walk. Then you will go for a walk. But an agitated mind which is not clear, then it will start gossiping, it will start finding some interaction, because it is not happy with itself. It is not contemplating on the self. You can do that even while talking, but only you have to be truthful to yourself. While eating, talking, walking, you can be aware. One part of the mind can be always on the self, but only you can know that. I have given this example of driving, isn't it? You remember? We know what the destination is, we know where we have to reach. Hillsville, Maitripa Buddhist Center. You start from home. So many red lights are there, traffic is there, people are there, pedestrians are there, so many folks in the road are there, music is there. All the thoughts, oh, what I'm going to do after the retreat is over, I have to come back on time so that Monday morning I can be at work, and this, all the things, projects are going on. But in and through this cacophony of thoughts that are erupting in your mind, one part of your mind is absolutely clear as to the destination that you have to reach, isn't it? And because of that, you are able to maneuver through the traffic, not only the road traffic, but also the mental traffic, without forgetting your destination. Same thing, that same ability we have to invoke for our entire life to reach the destination of the self. Never forget. Whatever is to express through you, it will. You cannot stop it. But don't forget. So if we have to express, whatever has to express will express, then why put efforts towards it? You put efforts to think about the self then. Then whether you have to do business, whether you have to become a millionaire, whether you have to become a pauper, whether you have to live in a mansion or you have to live in one single room, all that will happen because it's already worked out. You only ordered it for yourself before taking this birth. We are not going to go into that because student has already worked that out, and I hope you have also. So you're not going into the karma part of it. Our attention is only on the self. And such is a Dhira Purusha. And what does he say? Amruta Bhavanti. He is not after the various lokas. He is not after the divine, after the heaven, or he is not after the heaven where the divine beings live, or where the ancestors live, or where the gods live. He is not interested in all that. He is after what? He is after immortality. And only such a person who is continuously without a break. What is that which is without a break? Just like when you take oil from one pot into the other pot. When you pour it, there is no break in the stream of the oil that is pouring, that you are pouring. When you pour water, there might be bubbles in between, there might be gaps in between. But when you pour oil, it's a homogeneous mass continuously flowing from one container to the other. Same way, when we think about the reality, continuously, this thought flow, homogeneous, that means the total mind and intellect is totally geared towards the self. In this manner, we live our life. Knowing fully well that the thoughts appearing in the mind and intellect can never reach the destination that we are seeking. Knowing fully well. But that initial step is required. The effort, remember that frog? He tried but he converted the yogurt into butter. The buttermilk into butter and water. And then he was able to escape from the clutches. So we have to struggle. We have to put effort. I shouldn't say struggle, otherwise you will get it wrongly. We have to put effort. But effort not to achieve anything in the world. We have to put effort to know ourselves as we are. And what is this effort? This effort, when will this effort become effortless? When you have exhausted all the possibilities of wanting to know the truth through the thoughts. Till then, the thoughts will keep appearing. Okay, I can think about it this way. Oh, I think this way. And then we'll do all the dramas till you come to a point that I'm tired now. I can't. Oh Lord, oh God, oh self, you only reveal. I can't. Because how can a limited mind, thoughts and words in the mind and intellect are finite? How can a finite ever come to know the infinite? It is an impossibility. But that effort has to be made. And where the effort stops and awareness remains, there the truth reveals. And how does the effort stop? Effort stops means thinking stops. Initially. Because you're thinking, therefore the efforts, isn't it? So when the thinking stops, and you are aware, you are not gone to sleep. Therefore this morning also, you are putting the effort to remain aware of your breath. If your mind goes out here, your mind goes out there, bring it back to the breath. This is the effort. You are learning how to be focused on one point, the breath. Then after some time I remembered that maybe someone is sleeping. Do not go to sleep. So when the thoughts subside, as a natural consequence, and you are awake, that is a realization. That is coming to the conscious principle. Then recognizing, initially we have come to understand that this one who is awake without any thoughts itself is the reality, and it is infinite. This education we have to do before we come to that. Otherwise, if we become realized here, then we'll say others are not realized, and we'll go try to improve the world. Build ashrams, build hospitals, help those who do not want help. And we will not help ourselves. So with this, we come to the there is the third verse. Third verse says, the teacher is saying, he sees that when he made this statement that it is the ear of the ear, it is the eye of the eye, it is the mind of the mind, the student was understanding, but still clarity is not there. So the teacher trying to explain more in detail, he says, na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vag gacchati no manaha, na vidmo na vijani maha, yathaitad anushishyat, anyadeva tad vididadatho avididadadhi, iti shushruma purvesham, yenastad vyachachakshire. Now what is he saying? I have explained a little bit, but he says, na tatra chakshur gacchati, meaning the eyes cannot reach the eye of the eye, the mind cannot reach the mind of the mind, the speech cannot reach the speech of the speech, the ears cannot reach the ear of the ear. So if you are using your senses, when we use the word senses, it's not only the five senses but also the mind and intellect. When we use these senses to catch the eye of the eye or the ear of the ear, it is a foolish exercise because it cannot reach there. Then what? The eye does not go there, nor speech, nor mind. We do not know that. What? You don't know what is the source of everything? No, we do not know that. We do not know how to instruct about that reality. The teacher is saying. Because no words can reach there, no concepts can reach there, no ideas can reach there. The only way we know how to communicate is through finite words, finite ideas, finite concepts. But all these equipments or instruments that we have through which we create communication, all these are null and void when it comes to Brahman. What can we do? So we do not know how to instruct. Then the teacher says, Anyade na vidmo na vijanimaha yathaitad anushishyat. He says, it is distinct from the known and above the unknown. We have heard it, so stated the preceptors who taught us that. I am telling you what I am telling you because you asked the question, and I am telling you what my teacher told me. That's all I can do. And I am only using the words which my teacher used. So I am like a parrot. But this is the way the knowledge is passed on. So I am passing it on. Now, whether what I am speaking to you as a teacher is what my teacher taught. I prepared myself and I was able to grasp it. I was able to surrender to it. Now you have to do the same. So don't try to conceptualize that I'm going to catch Brahman, I'm going to become one with Brahman, I'm going to surrender to Brahman, I'm going to sit in meditation and Brahman will come and reveal itself to me. We use all these words, but nothing like this happens. Because Brahman cannot, the reality cannot be created in time. It is always. So when you say it will be revealed, so which means that it was not revealed before. No, it is revealed before also. It will be revealed after. It is always. So there is no question of revelation. And therefore the difficulty in instructing what this principle is. We have heard it, so stated the preceptors who taught us that. See, there were two, one great, one miserly businessman, and he goes to a bank and he takes out a lot of money, a big wad, and he's carrying it. And this one fellow, con man, he looks, this going, and he follows him. He finds this fellow is going from Delhi to Bombay, so he also gets it. This businessman gets into a first class ticket. He also gets a first class ticket, and and in the first class compartment only two people, he and him. And every now and then the businessman will take out 1, 2, 3, 4. This fellow is money, money, money. And he has followed this businessman. Why? Because he wants to take that money and get off at one of the stations and become rich. It's a big one. So he's waiting and he counts 2-3 times. Then in the evening he goes to sleep. Now in those days, Delhi to Bombay trip used to take 3 nights. So first night he goes to sleep, the businessman goes to sleep, and this other fellow, this thief, he looks around, he searches the whole compartment, but he can't find the money. He says, where could he have? And again in the morning he gets up and he finds, after some time, after breakfast and all, he comes in, again he's counting the money. It's all there, yeah, good. And then again puts it, and then afternoon again he counts it and he puts it. Then second night, this fellow again thinks, today I am a good thief, I am a successful thief. That's why I can afford even first class fare. So I have to get this money. Again he searches the second night, can't find it anywhere. He opens the bags, the suitcase, the briefcase, everywhere he searches. He can't find the wad of money. Then the third day, he is frustrated now. Where could it be? I am such a a good thief. Nothing from the nooks and corners I can open locks, this, that. But where this fellow is, it beats me. And then they reach Bombay, and he gets down, and again counting. From where did this money come out again? So he gets out and he couldn't stop himself. He says, I have been seeing you counting your money and I've been trying to find out where you hide the money. He says, I hid it where you suspect the least, under your pillow. Same way, this great wealth which surpasses all wealths, that is the reality, that our essential nature, it is hidden within us. Therefore, it is Guhya. Guhya means it is a secret. Remember in Kaivalya Upanishad, it is in the secret cave of the heart. It's hidden there, closest to you, and yet we feel that it is far away from us. The water in the wave is closest to the wave, yet the wave is continuously searching outside, asking the other teacher wave, please teach me, how do I know that I am water? The teacher says, Na vidmo na vijanimaha yathai tad anushishyat. I cannot teach you that you are water. Because if I use any words, that is a disservice to the water. Because words cannot reach it. You have to stop thinking of yourself as a wave and water you are. This is the dilemma that every teacher and every scripture is not, and teacher is not in a dilemma, but how to communicate it. This reality can be communicated only in a suggestive manner, through the words, but knowing fully well that the words cannot reach it. We use the word truth, we use the word absolute truth, we use the word consciousness, we use the word pure consciousness, we use the word spirit, we use the word infinite, we use so many different God. But all those words cannot take you to the reality. And yet you are that. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So spend next 1 hour. What's the time now?